Right, mate. So Steve, we'll do. Usually they last about 45 minutes, something like that, and basically, mate, all about you, all about your story. Where you were, where you grown up, or your past, the issues that you've been through in your life, and sort of the tools and methods that you use to get yourself out of where you were, and sort of where you are now, I guess. What you're doing in life. So, if you want to give me a bit of a background as to where you're from, hobbies, sports, growing up, things like that.
It's a beautiful thing. I really appreciate you asking me. Really, do you know what I mean?
No problem. Yeah, of course.
It was one of the main motivating things for me doing it through social media. Really, was
Yeah.
to try and get the message out there of not suffering in silence, and
Hmm.
because obviously we live in really strange times in terms of the demands on life and the expectations, and
Of course. Of
that
course.
everything's about happiness and joy and having fun, and the reality of life is quite different.
I agree.
um, so and there's a lot said now about, because I've worked in the field of addiction for, I mean, to give a bit of background,
Yeah.
because it's probably
Just firstly, can you hear me okay? Is everything clear on my side?
perfect.
Yeah. Cool.
um,
Cool.
and I think we're kind of doing the similar thing, aren't we? We're trying to carry a message,
Yeah.
and we're trying to give people permission to be themselves and to be okay with themselves and to be able to grow and nurture and kind of get a sense that we're not suffering alone. Um, we kind of are trying to, if you like, get people communicating again more effectively. So a bit of background for me is I'm the youngest of 4 children. Dad was hard-working, working-class fella, grafter, put a shift in. Mum was from Dublin in Ireland, and lost her parents very young and came over here to build a new life. I couldn't have wished for anything better. Really good mix. Grandparents were both away in the war, sergeants. So all the values, all the principles, all the right things were all in place for me as a child. But then, my mum and dad my dad kind of bit of a player, really, bless him. Do you know what I mean? And really hurt me mum. And I just remember all them years ago, the feeling of being overwhelmed and scared and frightened and being terrified of my own emotions and watching my mum suffer. And it was horrible. Do you know what I mean? It was like, and it was my first experience of what I call powerlessness, which was kind of like, I want to do something here, but I have no idea what it is I'm supposed to do.
I have the exact same thought process.
And so kind of, and then she got poorly, and she died of cancer, and
Bless
you
her.
know, and I was only a teenager at the time. And don't get me wrong, I started dabbling around. I got older brothers and stuff like that. So back in my day, because I'm 50 now, it being in the pub and having a tot and all that, and going out on a Thursday night and all that, that was just standard.
Yeah.
And so kind of, I was embarking on that journey already, but I was, as she got more and more poorly, my behaviour just went downhill then, really. And we're talking late 80s, early 90s, so obviously the rave scene kicked off. So, but what I found with myself very quickly was, I wasn't interested in the music or the clothes. I was more interested in getting high. Do you know what I mean? And I know that today to be a kind of response to the trauma of losing my mum. You know, that was part of it. So then the journey just went on then really through addiction and like, you know, it is important to know where someone's been and so on and so forth. But, you know, I like to kind of talk about, I like what Gabor Mate says, and thank God for people like Gabor Mate. And
I love him, absolutely love him.
Because not why the addiction, why the pain. You know, why are you suffering? What's wrong? You know, and you know, I was always in a lot of pain. I look back and I can reflect back, and now I've done some work on myself, and I've healed a bit, and I've kind of understood. I kind of realised that there was something deeply missing, you know, in me in terms of how to communicate. That I was consistently guided by my feelings, which then sent me into an irrational state of mind a lot, filled with anxiety and depression way before I picked up any substances. And funnily enough, I've now heard thousands of people's life stories who have all fell into addiction, and I'm talking literally thousands. And they all talk about feeling different at school, feeling different in their friends group, and feeling uncomfortable in their own skin.
Yeah. So I'll give you a little background as to my issues. A lot of my issues stem from childhood trauma. That was sort of why I fell into addiction. Well, I know that it is that, so it's not sort of. And when you talk about not feeling normal, so I talk about how I created this completely different person or a persona or a perception of who I should be in society. And I say this to a lot. I've had a conversation this morning with a guy, and he was quite amazed that somebody who sort of acted the way I've acted over the years or looked the way I looked, sort of thing. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'6" and 20 odd stone. And he was like, "Well, you can't struggle. You look big and strong." And whereas deep down I wasn't. I'd created this sort of avatar of a human to sort of overshadow my traumas and my problems from being a child. And that's, it took me a long time to realize why I was the way I was. And similar to yourself, I'm in the process now of sort of mentally growing. I've just started. For what? I'm not doing it to be a professional or a coach or anything like that. But I'm studying the mind and neurolinguistics and other things like that. And that's where I'm at the moment, because I think I've really learned to understand who I am as a person. I'm not saying I'm 100% fixed yet, because I'm not. I've still got a lot of things that I need to work on in my life, in all aspects of life, I guess. But yeah, it turned me into a person that I didn't want to be. It turned me into a person who I didn't love, who I didn't respect. I hated myself. I didn't like living in my own skin, like you said. I couldn't really look at myself, and for that reason, I punished myself for a long time. So yeah, I completely agree with what you just said there.
Yeah, and I think culture, environments, this is the thing. When you start getting into this and you start learning about it, it's very complex. Like that, it's not straightforward. You can't pinpoint anything, because what culture you're growing up in, what environment you're growing up in, what's the what's fashionable at the time, even because when, like in the 80s, when there was kind of football hooliganism. You had to be the biggest, the fastest, the sharpest, the quickest, and the strongest in order to have any credibility. Or that was the perception. Reputation was, all these things that you learn when you grow older are just not important whatsoever and serve no purpose.
I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but it's called hedonistic happiness, where you focus on all the sort of perceptions of your reality which don't mean anything. I only learned this probably 4 or 5 days ago, what that word actually meant when I was training. Where it's hedonism, where we think that being the biggest, the strongest, the nicest clothes, the best jewelry, all these things, when deep down they mean absolutely fuck all.
They mean, and Peterson talks about it a lot. Brand talks about it a lot. I've listened to thousands of podcasts because you're right. You've got to invest in your mind. Your mind's a muscle, just like you've gone and done your jiu-jitsu tonight to kind of learn a discipline that's got a strategy, that's strategic in its making, which has also got a very spiritual element to it as well, because it isn't necessarily about victory. It's about participation. It's about being able to control your emotions, your thought processes, staying calm, Now, these are all things that we're just not taught, and they certainly weren't taught in the culture I grew up in. How do you conduct yourself in a situation that's quite stressful, that you feel overwhelmed in, that you feel like you need to be above the person or whatever that perception might be. But for me, feeling less than, not good enough, we're certainly underpinning a lot. And they talk about self-worth and what does that mean, and that inner critic that you start to learn about yourself, your triggers from your trauma responses, rejection, abandonment, and the incessant overthinking. Now, there's a great correlation now and a lot more research into ADHD and addiction. They're saying there's a close link, and that's certainly been my experience of working in the field for the past 18 years. Because, when I went to rehab and everything had gone, my health was really bad. I was suffering. I walked into a treatment centre. I had a black back bin liner full of stolen toiletries from the pound shop. Do you know what I mean? That's all I owned in my life. I've got no family. They wouldn't speak to me because they're working class, hard working, good souls, good people, real good people, but they didn't tolerate me. Now, don't get me wrong. People hearing this who have got somebody in their family who's suffering from addiction, I'm not saying that this is what you need to do. This is what worked for me. And they just cut me off. They went, if you want to live that way, we can't help you. Do you know what I mean? So my life then involved jails, institutions, and then near-death experiences. And then it was kind of walked into that treatment centre with no ID, no bank account. I wasn't even on benefits. I had no home. I had no friends. I had no family. So I pretty much didn't exist in this world. That's where it took me. So that hedonistic dream of escaping reality just came to an absolute, burnt every single bridge, left nothing but destruction, and was still left with so much pain and hurt and sadness. So
what would you say? What would you say was the lowest point for you?
Getting out of prison on the last sentence and listening to the screw come down. I mean, I call them prison officers now. I need to behave myself. It's been a long time since I used that language. Do you know what I
mean? We all know what you mean.
Yeah. So, and listening to the keys coming down, usually I'd be chomping at the bit to get out. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd be up ready, sitting on my bed, ready for that, and gone. And I just remember feeling like, I can't do this no more. I know exactly what's going to happen when that door opened. I played the tape. I knew by dinner time I'd have no money. I've still got nowhere to live. And I'm coming back at some point very shortly. I just knew the pain, the misery, and the destruction. So, but I was quite fortunate, really, because I had a kind of, if you like, a bit of a spiritual awakening when I was quite poorly. I was in a hospital because I used to inject into my groin and, heroin, crack and all that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was everything all the time. I mean, that's by the by. But I was in hospital with what they call bacterial endocarditis, which is a heart infection. I had sepsis and I had pneumonia, and I was in intensive care. And long story short, I came round, and bear in mind, I'm, just come out from a coma after about 7 weeks. And like a typical good old-fashioned addict, the first thing I did when I could carry me drip down the stairs was I went outside and had a spliff at 7 o'clock in the morning, which is, what you do. And I remember coming back into the hospital room, and I was sat there, and this West Indian lady walked in, and it was almost as if the scales fell from my eyes. Because, like, I don't know, have you smoked weed before? You know the score with weed, don't you?
Yeah.
So you imagine first thing in the morning, your eyes are all glazed and da-da-da. She walked in the room, it was like the scales had fell from my eyes and everything was bright again for a second. And she said, "Do you remember me, Stephen?" And I said, "No, I don't. I'm sorry." And she said, "I looked after you when you was in intensive care." She said, "I prayed for you every night." And I just got this, it broke me, if I'm honest, because I just thought, a stranger who doesn't know me, never met me, showed me that love that I was craving. And I didn't know it was that. But just somebody had gone out their way, and she didn't have to do this. Something inside went, something's got to change here. Because, and long story short, I ended up in rehab. And the one thing about rehab, what it taught me, and it kind of brings it back really, is because I had nothing. They kind of told me the first day I got clean, I'd got something to give away, which was hope. And I thought, I'm on that. That was the first thing I grasped. They said, you have the kind of tools now to be able to help other people and give them hope. And that is what I have spent the last 18 odd years doing. That seems to be my purpose, is how can I serve? How can I be of duty? How can I influence in a more positive way to make up for all the damage and the harm that I not only caused myself but others?
That there is the best form of happiness. That's something that, like you say, I'm trying to do myself now. Giving and not receiving is probably the best form of happiness you can receive in life. I've got a question for you. What do you think allows you the ability to be able to help somebody? Because this is what I'm seeing on TikTok at the moment, or any social media, is there's a lot of, one thing I've noticed, there's a lot of people on social media who will call themselves life coaches, sobriety coaches, drug and addiction coaches, grief coaches. And there's some really positive people there that I listen to a lot, and I take a lot from them as well. But then on the negative side of it, you've got people saying that they're charging for a service that they can be provided for free. And then there's a lot of arguing going on at the moment, which I don't really get involved with, but I sort of look at it because, I think I'm in the process of unlocking my power of being able to help people. I really believe I'm good at it. I believe I've got the ability and the knowledge to. I had a conversation this morning in the high street where I live for 45 minutes with a gentleman who was really struggling. And I was walking down the street and he flagged me over. He said, Lee, come here. So I went over and we had a conversation. And I said to him, take my phone number. Whenever you want to speak to me, I'm here for you. But, there just seems to be this backlash on a lot of people at the moment that if you're either not a qualified therapist or psychiatrist, or you're not in Alcohol Anonymous or Drug Anonymous, then you shouldn't really be offering your help to people. And I disagree with that, because me personally, I believe that help is help, no matter what way, shape or form. If you're trying to help somebody, then there's beauty in that, right? I can't really find anything negative in that. You might be able to, bring a different angle for it, but for me, I don't see any problem with it, whether it's charged or not. Some people want to do it as a job, as a profession, and there just seems to be a lot of sort of negativity around that at the moment. So I just wanted your views on that.
So, I mean, firstly, what I'd like to reflect on first is you're a big guy, you're 6'6", you do jiu-jitsu, you obviously look after yourself, you obviously believe in that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, although that didn't serve you a great purpose, people will listen to you because of it. Do you know what I mean? Like, and for me, I mean, this is quite a complex conversation, this one, because obviously I still work for a non-profit charity that delivers substance misuse countrywide, and it's probably the biggest provider of it, and I have done for 14 years consistently, but I did 4 years with other organisations, and all I can say to you is it's the easiest way to do it is to disqualify yourself. Do you know what I mean? Because, and what I mean by that is you be honest and be who you are and be authentic and just say, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a counsellor, but I'm a good listener, and if you want to talk me through, I can share my experiences with you. Now, nobody can take that away from anyone. There's a big push at the moment for trauma survivors to be coming out and speaking out, and saying, I've survived it, I got through it, and I think the trouble is now is that what is your primary purpose? Why is it you do what you do? And is it for the right reasons? And I learned pretty early on that if it's coming from my head and not my heart, it's not coming from the right place. It's my duty to be part of my community, to be part of society, to be part of my family, and to be helpful wherever I can be. I try and help people to find the tools to help themselves.
Same. That's what I'm trying to do. I appreciate what you just said there, because that was the answer that I was looking for, because that's the advice that I give to anybody. Even though I'm sort of in this mode at the moment where I'm gaining knowledge every day, more and more knowledge, build everything. But I believe the only way to truly helping somebody is by, like I did. I've never been to rehab. I've never been to AA or anything, nothing. The one thing I did was fail. And then slowly I'd pick up a little win, and then another little win, and another little win. And I've sort of just, don't get me wrong, I'm probably 80% through my journey. I still have bad days, the same as everybody else, but I've picked up all these tiny little wins, which in turn have helped me massively. I've forgiven myself for the wrongdoings that I've done. I now protect my childhood self, which I've never done. I'm learning to accept what is. So with good, there comes bad. With bad, there comes good. Everything has an opposite and positive and negative reaction. Now, so I'm just constantly, every day now, I'm listening to everything from, talking about the brain, rewiring the brain, to spirituality, to meditation, to mindfulness, to meaningness. I had a conversation with a guy from Bulgaria this morning on numerology, which I'd never even heard of before, and it amazed me how numbers and letters sort of coincide with astrology and the planets, and how, when you were born, a certain energy was given to you when you were born, and all these types of things. And I'm absolutely loving it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like, once I've gone through all those things and learned to accept what is, and what's been done is done, and what will be, I can give the advice based on what I've done. But I mean, you know this better than anybody, for the amount of years that you've put in. Is you can sing till the cows come home, but if somebody doesn't want to listen, they won't. It's down
Yeah,
to us as individuals to accept information or not, to learn from it or not. And people, the worst part is people will only start to break out of this stigmatic place where, you know, oh, we can't talk about mental health once they've been through a load of bullshit in their life, a load of negative darkness. And it's only then, unfortunately, that people are willing to speak out, which is sad.
and and it's interesting what you say there. You know, about investment and learning. What do you think for you is the what changed for you? So
I,
yeah. So what if you was to break it down into a simple principle? What was that was the defining moment of change?
so for a long time, and I've mentioned this before, so probably 3 years ago now, I took a cocaine overdose and tried to kill myself. Um, and I took a load of sleeping tablets and tried to end my life. And I've never believed in fate, and I've mentioned this many a time. My girlfriend, who I'm with now, we're happy, but it's a forever thing. I can guarantee you that. I met her through fate a couple of days later after I woke up the day later after trying to kill myself. I woke up on my bedroom floor and I couldn't believe I was still alive, to be honest. Anyway, fate kicked in. I met this woman, and don't get me wrong, for the first X amount of time we were together, I made a hell of a lot of mistakes because I'd fall back into the habits that I was used to. And it was only when she said to me, you know, if this carries on, I'm going to leave. So we've got to make changes. And even after that conversation, I still made a few mistakes here and there, but it was probably that piece there. And then me wanting to be better was probably the other. I had a spiritual awakening probably the middle of last year when I went to it's called a Master Your Life event in Wigan. And I'd done it was weird. I think it was like a form of meditation that they put us through. It was about trying to protect our childhood selves. And I sort of and honestly, I had like an out of body experience where I went to visit my childhood self. And in doing so, it was like I wrapped a coat of arm around him and said, I've got you. I'm going to protect you. And it was at that moment in time, shit, man.
It's all right, man. Listen,
And it was
real.
at that moment in time where I realised you're stronger than you know. And again, old habits sort of die young. You know, they were still, even after that, they were coming back and coming back. And then all of a sudden, there was this conscious decision, and something just switched in me. And I believe I'm on this journey now for a reason, to meet people, to become friends with new people like you and the other people that I've spoke to. And most importantly of all, to help people, because, and I've said this before, that people try to find what the journey is in life, how to be successful and how to make money and which is fine. I got no problem with it. But the more and more I'm having these types of conversations with people, I'm starting to realize that the real form of happiness in life is the journey. It's not the finish line, it's the journey. It's the people you meet, it's the people you help, it's the emotions you feel, it's all that. That in itself is how we find our purpose and our happiness. And I really mean that, I really do.
I really appreciate and thank you for sharing that with me. If I'm honest, I got proper chills, man. I love that stuff. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? The power
yeah,
of connection, you see.
yeah.
Now we don't know each other, but we do.
I've never spoke to you before, but yeah, I feel like I do know you.
Do you
Yeah,
know what I'm saying? And
yeah,
that's what comes with experience, Lee.
yeah, yeah.
So, like, what I'm saying is the principle of being open and receptive. That's the most important thing. Your mind's got to be open. because a lot of the things that we go searching for need an open mind. You can't graft a new idea onto a closed mind. You can't. But what you can do is you can show the evidence, because like you said, and you mentioned this earlier, I want to just make sure I got this clear. There is a lot of influencers out there, but there is a narrative to their story, and at the end of that story, there's a commitment to something, because obviously they want to make a living, which is absolutely fine.
Yeah, no problem.
They've got there's no issue there. But at the end of the day, we're in a day and age now where you can't get well unless you've got money. And that's the sad part of it. And this is the thing about, so I'm qualified, I've got level 3 in drug and alcohol, I've got level 3 in management, I'm a smart facilitator trained, I'm a group facilitator trainer, I'm a train the trainer, I've got a level 2 in motivational interviewing, I've got a degree level in coaching. I mean, the qualifications can go on, if you like. But nothing beats genuineness, kindness,
I agree,
compassion. And as you've just experienced there, motivational interviewing is something to have a look at. Okay? Just as a suggestion, it's from Carl Rogers' theory of person-centered approach to dealing with people. Now, the reason why it's an art and it's a skill is because it helps people to change. It doesn't tell people to change, because that's the key thing. I've worked in services for years, frontline, needle exchanges, you name it, where people are at their worst. And you know what? If I was to break it down and keep it simple, because there's one thing you mentioned about wrapping that armour around the boy and telling him he's going to be all right. There's strength in that, there's power in that, there's beauty in that, but underneath it, there's love.
Love for myself, that's what it was. Even though I felt, because I'm now this big guy who thinks he's strong and tough guy and whatever, initially I thought it was that, but it's self-love, it's love for myself, because a lot of people in addiction, it's because of self-hatred, like we said before, and it was only at that moment where I learned to love myself and say to my childhood version, "You're good, man. I've got you." It was only from then that
I'm going to keep you safe. And I think, for me, I kind of, for me, like you, on exactly the same journey, right, I need to invest in myself every way possible. If I'm going to be able to help people, now don't get me wrong, you're a brave man. You've got courage. You're putting yourself out there quite early on. I've been doing this for ages, so I've been speaking in front of people. I've done convention speaking. I've trained staff and professionals, and trust me, clinical people are hard work sometimes. Do you know what I mean? Because what they've been taught is what they believe, and some of it contradicts with what we're trying to achieve, if you like. There's barriers and obstacles and red tape and risk assessments, and there's all sorts, which is why you get that kind of credibility. Like, who are you to tell me what qualifications have you got? Well, I always say to people this very statement, thermometers have got degrees, and you know where they stick them, don't you? Do you know what I mean?
I absolutely love that, because if I'm being honest, so everything that you just said there, I'll give you a small quick example. So I went to the Priory in Manchester. So you know where that is, right? Obviously.
Yeah.
And I sat down with this guy, and when I got there, they said to me, he's one of the best psychologists or psychiatrists in Britain, this guy. So I thought, oh, this guy's going to really help me. So I sat down. This guy come in 15 minutes late. Didn't even look at me. Didn't shake my hand. Didn't look me in the eye, nothing. He sat down. He got a scrumpled piece of paper out of his pocket, put it on the table, licked his tongue with a pen, like this. Didn't even look at me, even still. tell me what's wrong. I poured my soul out to this guy, right? He didn't even address me, didn't acknowledge me or nothing. At the end, he said to me, you need to go and have CBT training. And that was it. And I walked out of there. And if I'm being honest, I wanted to fill him in.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was, and this is sort of what's getting my back up with this, like, who's qualified and who's not. This man showed me no emotional response whatsoever as a human being. He looked at me as an appointment rather than a human being, you know. And people are going to try and tell. And this guy might be fantastic. He's probably got a hell of a lot more knowledge than I have when it comes to the brain and how to make people better. But one thing I've got is I've got empathy in abundance, I believe. And I enjoy speaking to people, and I enjoy listening to the journey, whether they've had negative or not. I enjoy it because by me sitting and listening to people, it allows them to feel comfortable and say things that they normally wouldn't, whether that be even if it's on a phone call. It doesn't have to be on a podcast. There's guys who were messaging me this morning off social media and they won't come on the podcast, which is fine. I've got no problem. But I give every one of them my phone number. If you ever want to vent and just scream and shout down the phone, I'll listen, because I'd rather do that than listen about people killing themselves, you know? And just because I haven't got the qualifications doesn't mean that I'm inhumane and I'm not allowed to even try and help somebody. You know, if there was a guy on the floor dying, would I not go over and try and help him because I'm not a doctor?
Yeah, and I think, look, don't get me wrong, you know, I've worked in professional services now for 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
They're under-resourced. People have got far too high caseloads.
Yeah,
and the person said, and they're running around on burnout. And it's one of the reasons why I started doing what I did, because, you know, like I do 12-step stuff, and I sponsor people, and I help people, and I support people, and I do service, and I'm committed to my recovery in that sense. You know, I've got a family, I've got a wife, beautiful wife, got 2 beautiful daughters. They're dancers, so I'm committed to that. So in all that, and this is the thing about men's mental health, in that I have then got to look after myself. Do you know what I mean?
Course.
And my well-being.
Yeah.
And a few times over the years, you know, one of the underlying for me, and this is a personal belief, stress is the most contributing factor to poor mental health. If your stress levels are high for a significant amount of time, your mental health will suffer. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, where do I start? You start researching about how to reduce stress. Now, we've already talked about them things right here. Talking on a level with somebody you trust, because don't forget, men don't talk because we don't know who to trust all the time. We don't know who's got our best interest at heart, and we don't know if someone's going to mock us.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
we've got an ego that kind of, which isn't always a bad thing. I mean, the ego can be, if it's used for the arrogant, self-seeking stuff, then obviously, you know, it's destructive, but it's also a survival mechanism. So, you know, that kind of opening up and being. So the first thing for me is, what's your stress levels like? Get a pen and paper out, like Peterson says this. Get a pen and paper out and just put why.
So Jordan Peterson was probably the first step I ever took to trying to figure out what my traumas were. And I remember being sat in my bedroom, and he said, at the time it was, I don't know what's wrong with me, what's the matter with me, crying and all this stuff. And I just came across, I'd never heard of him before. This was about 3 years ago. And he said, you know, we think that we don't understand what's wrong with ourselves, but yet if we sat at the end of our bed with a pen and paper, we could write down 50 things that we know that are wrong with us. And he's right, we do. Our own self-conscious mind will tell us what's wrong with us. If in the morning, if I wake up and I've been out on the beer all night, I'm hungover. Oh, what's wrong with me? I feel rough. Well, I know what's wrong with me. I've been out on the piss all night. And it's how
And
we,
it's those finer details then of,
yeah,
well, you're dehydrated, you
yeah,
put loads of
of
glucose and
course, yeah,
sugar in your
yeah,
body. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
And that's the thing about when your mind becomes open, you start to look at the research. So when you're doing with mental health in particular, addiction, recovery, trauma healing, any of this stuff, start to read what's underneath it as well, because what you do in recovery as you go along in the years, you start unearthing. You start unearthing, because this is the thing. Suffering is unavoidable. There's going to be elements of it. It's going to be tough at times. There's going to be a level of darkness, but there is always hope. There's always that little bit of light. Now, this is why you're saying influencing people in a more positive life, in the sense of, these are the things that work for me. What I've always done, Lee, and I'll still do it, even though I'm trained in all this stuff, when it's just me and you're just getting my experience.
of course,
I'm not trying to be anything other than me and you having a chat, and you
yeah,
asking me questions, and I'm asking you questions about your journey and what you've done. I'm just me here. And the
yeah,
first thing I identified was, because once you stop using, there's a pink fluffy cloud period, because you're really grateful. You're not using, you're not drinking. Things are lightening up. You're seeing the birds. You're smelling the flowers. You're starting to kind of feel that inspiration, that little bit of hope. Then reality kicks in, and responsibility, and showing up, and commitment, and purpose, and meaning. Now, then these things are having to be balanced then, because life gets very busy, like yours is now. Your phone's going all the time. Trust me, that won't slow down. That won't slow
I don't
down.
want, I don't want it to, but I just want to touch on that there. So when I first started the podcast, and again, I've mentioned this before, I did 5 episodes in a row, day after day after day after day, and this was early on, and because I was excited, I was excited to get
Mm.
up and speak to people. After 5 days, I was probably the most depressed I'd been in a long time because of vicarious trauma, as you probably know what that
Mm.
means, or you do
Yeah,
know what that means. You know what happened
yeah.
more than me, and I
Well,
couldn't figure out what it. I couldn't
just
figure out what it was.
just to clarify, just in case someone's hearing that, it's when you're receiving lots of other people's trauma. Although you're not conscious, this is tapping into your subconscious. It's going in. And
Oh
it's
yeah,
really important to get that message across, because, again, I've worked in the field a long time, and I've heard a lot of really disturbing, troubling stories, and I never used to identify it. I used to get home sometimes and my head would be so busy. I'd be irritable, I'd be restless, I'd be discontent, my sleeping patterns, everything. I was overeating, or do you know what I mean? Like there was a load, and I never identified that. So that boundary that you're about to tell me you put in, which I hope you're about to tell me you put in, once you expose yourself so much, what did you do next?
So what I did after those 5 podcasts, I was mentally broken. So what I've done is, and again, like you said before about keeping it simple, this is my life at the moment is probably the most simplistic it's ever been. I'm only since Christmas. I've always been a gym guy in and around gyms, so I've done diets and all this stuff. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I take my daughter to jiu-jitsu. I play golf. Just started lifting weights again now. I've got a job. I've got my missus, and I've got the 4 kids, and that's it. So my life is really simplistic at the moment. So that's sort of the approach that I now do with the podcast, because when I feel like it's about to burn me cap out, I step back from it and I say, I know that's there when I want to go to it. I know that's there when I need to go to it. At this moment in time, I feel as though if I do one more, it's going to pop me over the edge, and it'll send, it'll, rather than taking steps forward like this, now this is positive talk. if I was to do 2 or 3, the comments or the words, the affirmations that I use for myself would be more negative. So now
Well,
I know.
just to interrupt you there, if you don't mind. Have you noticed anything about yourself since you've been on here? Because I have.
I don't know.
No, it's and this is like a guilt-ridden belief system. This is something that I suffered with a long time ago, and because I observe this a lot, it's almost as if you're apologising for speaking about something again. You've said it a few times. You've said, "I know I've said this before." It's almost. Do you get what I mean? That's a subconscious thing. That is. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you get what I mean?
I do, yeah, yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying? That's what I mean
Yeah.
about the process of learning and growing. Eventually,
Mm-hmm.
you stop apologising for things because you know you've just been your genuine, authentic self. Your meaning is right, your purpose is right, and what you're trying to achieve is right. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah, yeah,
Because like
yeah,
you're already thinking about other people, which is beautiful. It shows who you are. You've got a big heart. And because you've done a few podcasts, it's almost as if you're saying, well, I know I've said this before, but it's yours and it's real and it's authentic and it's beautiful. And sometimes, if you're a learner like me, I need to be told over and over again because I forget things really easy.
Oh, mate, I'm one of. I'm honestly, I'd forget my head if it wasn't screwed onto my shoulders most of the time.
That's what I'm saying. But I do it. That's why I know, and that's why I spot it, and that's what I'm saying about about nurturing and growing and people mentoring and coaching each other. Now, one of the first questions you asked me was kind of like what my purpose is moving forward, really. And I think the first thing for me was I did a coaching degree last year, and one of the questions on the coaching was, "What's your vision for it?" And I thought, I didn't really. I had to really think about it and reflect on it and meditate, and I wanted because it seemed like a question that I needed to answer for myself. And I believe that it doesn't matter what level of income, everybody should have an access to some form of coaching,
I agree.
mentoring, and access to journaling, literature.
I've got my journal over there. It's just arrived today, my new one.
So, and how to do it. We can sit here and we want to try and help people improve their mental health. The first thing I always say to look at the stress levels in your life and start reducing them. Then start learning about off people that are doing it. So that's why the ice baths. The ice baths fundamentally for me, because I read Wim Hof's book, and in the first few chapters, he talks about he was in so much pain sitting by that river, and his instinct went, get in the water.
Yeah.
And I just went, I've got chills just, like on this conversation with you today, like, do you know when the hairs stand up on the back of your neck? I've had a few of them moments, do you know what I mean? But like...
You're talking about the moment where he was going to commit suicide because his wife passed away. She committed suicide as well, I think.
Yeah, she did. She jumped off an 8-story building. And I just remember thinking, that's for me, that is. There's something in that. And then I read the book, and then I've listened to Huberman, Gary, is it Brecker?
Yeah, I listen to Gary Brecker a lot, and Andrew Huberman, yeah.
So and that's what I say about learning underneath it. So, learning off people, because I'm too tight to pay for therapy, is the truth. I'm from the Black Country. We don't pay for therapy. Yeah. So when I started listening to Gabor Mate in my early days, like you are, researching, he said, go and find it. He said, if you can't afford it, it's out there. The literature's there. Now we've got podcasting. Now we've got YouTube. Now we've got all the literature. We can download stuff. But the trouble is with it, if you're sat in isolation on your own with this, you've got to untangle a tangled web. And it's a bit like a bowl of spaghetti, and looking at it going, I need to you've got to start slowly pulling it apart, and it's a process. Like healing's a process. You know, when you was holding that boy in the armour, yeah, that although that was a moment, that still needs to happen all the time. You're going to have to keep
Of course.
revisiting that. You're going to have to keep using that tool because we just get sucked into life. We get sucked into thoughts. We get sucked into old ways of doing things. That's why they're talking about neuro. How do we rewire the brain? Well,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I learned.
Sorry, go on.
No, but I'll tell you what I learned. How would you treat yourself better? Well, I had no idea. So what I started doing was treating other people better. And then that helped me to treat me better. You know, like really simple. Like this, it might always feel like a massive complex jigsaw puzzle that you just throw 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle in the air and then just look at, where do I start? Well, just with that bit there, and then put another bit there, and then put another bit there. You know, so the desire with the you know, like yourself, you know, I mean, you honestly, I've got to applaud your authenticity and courage for putting yourself out there, asking difficult questions, you know, and wanting to kind of get that message of hope out there, because that's all I'm trying to do. I mean, do I want to, you know, I've got massive ambitions, Lee. Do you know what I mean? I want to build like a big spiritual warrior kind of event where everyone at every different levels of fitness can come together and, do you know what I mean, just start, you know, because gyms are intimidating places. You know, at one point in my recovery, I did me back in, and that's where it really started for me with the ice bathing. I got COVID, I'd done me back in, I had sciatica, I was in chronic pain. I put on about 3.5 stone. I was 21 stone, and I was depressed. And I'd never felt so horrible in my whole life. And I just remember getting COVID, being really poorly, and again having another awakening of something's got to change here. And that's when I started really kind of, right, I am going to become the best version of myself, no matter what it takes. So having to sit on the exercise bike in a gym, just kind of going, I used to play football, I used to box, like, in my first 10 years of recovery, I used to run recovery football teams. I was playing Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. I was riding 8 miles a day on my bike to work. You know, like my fitness levels were, and then all of a sudden, my back went bosh. Funnily enough, playing golf, like of all the things,
I love it. I love playing golf. Love it.
I did a swing, and when the club went, well, full rotation, and I just, you know, when like you feel like I don't know if you've ever done your back, but it was like someone had stabbed me. I was in chronic pain for 18 months, like chronic. Wow. And this is the thing about hope and my mindset and your mindset, I'm pretty sure of it. I went to the MRI, they said it's your 4th and 5th vertebra. You're going to have pain all your life. What medications you want? That was it. And I just come out of there and I said to my wife, I ain't having that. I ain't having that. So I went and had a sports, you know, you went to see a
sports massage.
Had a sports massage. They showed me some yoga techniques. Just started doing yoga. Started including breathing techniques from Wim Hof. That was, you know, part of my morning routine. Deadlifting a fairly decent weight now. Do you know what I mean? Because, you know, you need goals. So I heard, and it was on a TikTok, as you do. Do you know what I mean? You got, like, if you can squat your body weight and deadlift double your body weight, you're in the top 5% of the world. I went, right, that's next. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm having that, I'm 50, I'll still do it. Doing that now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the mentality and the shift and so like I say, ice baths. I mean, what I do now, I journal,
Yeah.
I reflect. Every day, I've got the app Headway, which, if anybody wants to know, Headway, it's a subscription that you can pay for monthly. It's about 50 quid a year. But it's summaries of thousands of books, whether it's
Okay.
spirituality, psychology,
I'll write
whatever
that
it
down.
is. And it just puts it in like about 8 or 10 pages. You can even listen to it. So you can either read it or you can listen to it. I commit myself every single day to reading and investing in learning something for at least 30 minutes a day.
Okay.
I do my 5 rounds of breath. I do my ice bath. I do pray. That's for me,
Yeah.
because, I
I believe in a religion. I'm not sure. I believe in religion. I believe there's a God or a higher power. I've got sort of this critical way of thinking where I'm sort of try and dissect all the books, and I'm sort of coming up with my own story. But I
yeah.
believe in God. I believe there's a higher power.
I just think, like Peterson talks about, order in chaos.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's all recovery has been for me. I'm a very undisciplined person by nature.
And
I
me.
am guided by how I feel, and my feelings are very powerful. So they're dialed up a notch. I'm very sensitive, which again is what I had to learn. I'm a very sensitive individual. I feel other people's pain. I'm not very good at feeling my own pain. I am very empathetic, but sometimes I'm not very empathetic to myself. There's
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
these things.
We sound like very similar people.
So I had to learn how to be resilient. And this is what I'm saying on my TikToks. Like I say, I did the very same thing that you did when I mentioned it to you about the um, sort of apologising for repeating. But I'm not doing it anymore because it's about the
Okay.
message, not the
Yeah.
person or the
I'll
messenger.
definitely take that on board. I'll 100% take that on
It's
board for
not.
sure.
It's all about the message, not the messenger.
Okay.
Because
Fair point.
someone might only get 5 minutes of hearing you, and that could be the thing that changes their life. We all know that. That's why they've
Yeah.
got very good, these influencers. They know how to just cut and paste. And look, if you invest in it, you can do what you want. What most people
Yeah.
don't realise, and I tell this to my kids, if you watch the interview with Mr. Beast and Joe Rogan,
Yeah. I've
now,
watched it.
have you seen it? They
Yeah.
were working 16-hour days to get where they was. So,
Yeah.
like I always say to people, and I use this, it's a psychologists use this. You might use it yourself at some point. But you ask people the miracle question. And the miracle question is, if you was to wake up tomorrow and you had your ideal life, what would it look like? Who would be in it? What would you be doing? How would you be feeling? And where, and so for example, what job would you be doing? And, you know, even if the people are, and don't get me wrong, I deal with people that have been on cocaine and alcohol benders, so sometimes they're like, I want to play Glastonbury. And it's like, okay, no problem. I don't react to it.
Yeah.
And they're like 47 and never played an instrument in their life. And I'll say to them, no problem. Are you prepared to do what it takes to get there? And they'll say, well, what do you mean? I'll say, well, there's going to be rejection. You're going to fail. You're going to have to learn something. Are you committed? Are you disciplined enough? Have you got, are you prepared to do what it takes? Because if you are, then, we'll support this. You can have a go. But the Beatles played the basement clubs in Germany for 2 years and nearly give up. Do you know what I mean? If it wasn't for the fact that they just held on that little bit more, are you prepared to do that? Are you? Oh no, not really. All right then, what would you like? And most of them, it's quite simple with people in addiction. I want a home, a family, a job, normality, some food in the cupboard, all the things that everybody else kind of takes for granted. That's all they
It's, it's
dream of.
it's funny when you said there about the magic question, I sort of thought to myself, what would that question be?
Yeah,
And the first thing that popped into my head was my life movie. So what does my life look like from here until the end if it was a movie? What do I do? Who am I? What job have I got? Who am I helping? Where am I? Where do I live? And that was what popped into my head when you asked that question.
why not? You see, when you listen to Peterson, he says aim high and work to it.
Yeah. Well,
They're true stories.
and I think so. Again, like I said, this what I'm doing here. It's small at the moment, but I'm growing slowly by having conversations like this. But one thing, again, I think it was Jordan Peterson who said it. Um, don't miss the trees through the forest.
The journey, you mentioned it earlier. You said it's not about the destination. Remember that? And I
Yeah, it's
have to
about the
remind
journey.
people of this all the time, because if you're not paying attention to the journey, you'll miss the beautiful moments. And that's what mindfulness is. It's about having those moments. That's what jumping in the ice did for me at first, because I can assure you, when you first start jumping into ice baths, you ain't thinking about nothing else. Do you
But
know what I
no,
mean?
I
And
thought I was going to die the first time I ever jumped in one.
yeah, and then, when you're exercising and you think you can't push that one more rep out, but you do. That
Yeah,
time you go to the gym when you really didn't want to, and you come out feeling 10 foot taller, when
yeah,
you have that communication style where you can sit down with your partner and tell the truth,
yeah,
about how you feel, about things that affect you. That's what the gift of recovery has given me from all the ailments. It's given me the gift to be authentic. I don't have to pretend anymore. I'm not that person anymore. I don't live there anymore. Actually, I care about people. I'm a very kind, considerate, compassionate type of person, like you. Quite a big lad, tattoos everywhere. I put my teeth in for this. That's how. Like, I put my teeth in for this. Do you know what I mean? So like, the reality is that people's perception and perspective um, is tarnished by so many different things, which is why you can never pinpoint. Because I always say to people, they'll come to me with resentments and bitterness and twistedness. And again, if you listen to Peterson, he talks about the pathology and
yeah,
psychopaths and victims and oppressors and all this type of stuff, which is quite complex. If you're new to on a self-help journey, for example. But the thing is about it, people will come to me for stuff, and I'll always say one thing: there's a reason why people behave the way they do. There's always a reason. Hurt is predominantly underneath it. Same with anger. If you notice about anger, when people get angry, and I've seen this so many times working in services, by the end of it, they're crying because what's underneath it is pain.
yeah,
And it's their survival, fight or flight. It is simple.
yeah,
It's not
yeah,
complicated. You are threatening me in some way, shape, or form, or I'm being embarrassed, or the same things are repeating themselves. So you're saying no to me, which makes me feel not good enough and rejected and abandoned and alone again. You're supposed to care for me and you're not caring for me. Why don't you care about me? And that's the thing about communication. See, that psychiatrist, if he'd have been under my watch, honestly, I'd have tore him a new arsehole. Do you know what I mean? Because, like, who are you? Do you know what I mean? Like, hello, my name's Steve. I'll be looking after you today. What could you just tell me what's brought you here today? And then asking nice, gentle questions and holding that space for somebody. Because as much as we might have a laugh and we'll have a joke, and that's the good thing about recovery is you can laugh at your insanity, but the serious part is that when you're dealing with very fragile people, you've got to be careful what you say to them. Because you know what? Some people, they just need love. And this is what we've lost now. They just need love. And what does that look like? It shows that, look, I'm listening. I haven't got the answers for you, but I'll listen. You said it earlier. Do you know it's the most powerful thing and one of the hardest skills? Listening. Now, I don't know whether you've noticed, but there's been a few times because of what I do for a living, which is I'm an operational practice lead, so I go around and observe people's practices. Like, if somebody does what happened to you, I get to give them feedback and on their style, because there is a therapeutic style. So you reflect back people so they make sure they know you heard them. You ask open questions, which is what good podcasters do, like you have done today. You've asked some good open questions. Who are you? Where have you been? You haven't asked many closed questions. You've affirmed, and I've affirmed you. Have you noticed? Did you notice some affirmations in there? They feel good, don't they? It's amazing what a few little words can do.
Yeah.
And that's the art. See, you talked about qualifications. I've got pals I have who started charities, and they've asked me for my opinion on it, and I've said stay away from clinical practice and keep it service user led. So what it means is when they turn up, this is what we've got, this is what we do. If you want it, stay. If you don't, the service is down the road. Do you know what I mean? If you need, if we can't deal with it here through our experience and talking to you and nurturing you and helping you find some skills and some tools, then there's other services for you. Never take on something that's just too big, because people like dumping people, and that's the sad reality now. So, a big guy like you, if you was kind of quite hostile, on a relapse, full of alcohol, bowling through the corridors of a professional setting, everyone would be like, oh, I'm not seeing him, I'm not seeing him, I'm not seeing him. Do you know what I mean? Where, they don't want to manage that risk, because you've also talked about suicide. And suicide, people get scared and nervous about it because they don't want to be left holding the baby and be responsible if something bad happens. Where that shouldn't be the thought process. The thought process is, I want to talk to you. What's going on for you? How are you? Is there any different? But that's what we're in, a risk-averse kind of world, which is why people are speaking up now and saying, you know what, like, let's just talk to each other and learn from each other and grow and just watch other people. All we're trying to do tonight is give other people permission to say, two blokes that, thought one way, don't think that way anymore.
The beauty's in the journey, right?
It has to be. It has to be.
Well, listen, mate, I really appreciate you coming on. And if you're more than happy to, I'd like to do a few more of these with you, if that's okay with you.
Well, I'll tell you what to do if you want to. Pick a topic. I've got quite vast of experience around a lot of things.
So that was going to be my next question. But I'll chuck some topics at you, whatever that may be. I can work on that, but I'll throw some ideas at you.
My the way I see it is, Lee, that if I can help you,
of course,
do you know what I mean? Then let's do it, because we're both starting out, really, in a way, on this type of journey. This is the first one I've ever done. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think I'm on episode. This will be my 18th episode now. So,
and how have you found, just before we round off, how have you found them?
Honestly, some of them have been really difficult for a few reasons. Some of them have been the topics of conversation, where I'm looking another man in the eyes, when you can see it in his eyes that he's contemplating killing himself, and you almost feel, I don't want to say the word hopeless, because I believe it gives hope when they're sitting there telling their story. Difficult in another way, that some people that have came on there have been extremely difficult to communicate with. So like this conversation's free flowing. A lot of the time I've had to, well, not a lot of the time, some of the time I've had to really dig deep and try and find a question to try and spark a conversation. But also, if I'm going to be truly honest, I like the way people feel when they walk away. I've had quite a lot of guys walk, because I do a lot of the podcast. I was doing them in the cinema where I live. I live in North Wales, I do. So I was doing them in the, yeah, so I was doing them in the local cinema, and then I was doing some from my home. And I get to see the reaction of the guys when they're walking out the room, smiling, and they tell me that they feel a lot better. And if me sitting there for an hour or an hour and a half or whatever, if that's what I've got to do to allow a man to walk home and not contemplate wanting to end his life or take drugs or whatever, I'll do that, even if it's just sitting there letting them talk.
And I think, yeah.
And the feedback.
Yeah.
Sorry, mate. Go on.
No, I just think what's you put it very beautifully earlier about it being the journey and not the destination. It's learning. How many times I've been sat with somebody and felt well out of my depth is unbelievable. Do you know what I mean? And that's why you need a set of principles. And as long as you've got them and you've got a good heart, you'll be okay. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Because, like, people just need... I have. Yeah, I believe it's in abundance, mate. It's in abundance. But, you know, I appreciate your honesty of saying, it's, you know, I've had thousands of one-to-one sessions with people over the years. And, you know what? In hindsight, it's all learning. Yeah. But as long as you keep it pure and from the heart, you'll never go wrong.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
You'll never go wrong. But you know, look, I know quite a lot of really good, and I mean articulate, good speakers. If you wanted to get a few people on who can talk about this stuff, because I know people at all different stages of their journey, from relatively new to further on and everything in between, all doing diverse things. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, you know, all manner of jobs and careers and you know, hobbies, and you know, we're very much the get out there and get it done. You know, in the gym, you know, in the nature, in, you know, whatever it might be.
And the beauty that I've got is I enjoy listening to people. So, you know, I've got a diverse range of things that I enjoy. So it could be anything. It could be a mathematician. I hated maths in school, but somebody wants to come in here and it could be anything. Yeah. So if you've got an idea of anybody who's willing to do it, I'm more than happy to listen, because it benefits me at the end of the day. So I appreciate that.
I think you know, from our experience tonight is because you've got an art to do this and you've got the tools already, you know, homing them tools and sharpening them tools is going to be a priority. Yeah. Now, you know, I always say I'm a work in progress. I never talk as if there's a finished article. Every day is a school day. I don't believe there is. No.
I don't believe there is such thing as a finished article.
Every day is a school day.
Yeah.
Well, Lee, it's been emotional.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I'm really glad that we did it, mate. You know, I'd like to keep in touch if that's okay with you. Even off podcast,
I'll tell you what. You've got my email. Send me a number, and I'll add you to. We'll send a WhatsApp. So, and look, if you got any questions, you want to know, got any resources, just listen. You know, I really appreciate it. You know, I felt quite privileged to do this.
Thank you.
You know, let's see what happens.
Yeah. Cool. Right, job done. I'm gonna go and have some tea with the missus.
Yeah,
now.
mate, I've got a Chinese. I can smell it. That's why, like, I'm talking to you now, and I can see my wife's eating it on the settee there, and I'm thinking that Chinese smells nice tonight.
I've been on the carnivore diet for about 6 weeks, but tonight we're having. She's made us a lovely curry, so I'm gonna have that with her.
Yeah, listen, I'm mostly carnivore if I'm honest,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I've decided now on the 80-20 rule. I'm
I'll
80.
move away from it in the end. I will. I'll end up on the 80-20 definitely. But for now,
Yeah,
again, it was just about keeping it simple, strip everything
yeah,
back and rebuild.
yeah,
That's so
yeah.
that's what
Uh,
and I love it. I've lost 18 kilo.
well done, man. Well
Mm.
done. Feels good, doesn't it? Yeah, man. Good lad. All right then. See you, mate. I will. See you later. Ta-ra.